Wow, I can't believe that I've had this skateboard for almost a year now.
Oh man, that's slippery.
Cruising. Goes way too fast.
Hey, I'm Sam. I've owned the Meepo Voyager X for about a year now. I've put about 1,000 miles on it, and this is my long-term review. Also, just a quick disclaimer, I purchased this board with my own money. Meepo has zero to say with this video. They are not sponsoring it. They're not anything. These are all just my thoughts, and Meepo is not involved. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about this board, because while it's seriously awesome, it is not perfect. And I have some pros and some cons that we need to talk about, especially if you're looking into getting one yourself.
Actually, before we get into the pros, let's real quick talk about how well the board itself has held up over the last year of daily riding. This thing is built like a tank, and I gotta say, even after about 1,000 miles of riding, it's still in great shape. I do not treat my boards gently. It's regularly gone through puddles and snow and even some dirt trails, and it's still perfectly functional. There has been some cosmetic damage, as you would expect. It's mostly to the skid plates on the back that protect the belts, but other than that, the board is still in great shape. Everything still works just like it did fresh out of the box. The one exception is that I did have to replace both belts at around 300 to 400 miles, but that's standard maintenance for belt boards, so nothing out of the ordinary, and that's the only repair I've had to do, which you'd have to do on any belt drive board. What I did, and what I'd recommend you do, is just buy a couple extra belts of the right size, then that way when one breaks, you're immediately ready to go. Belts may be around about $5 to $10 a piece, and you can replace them in under 5 minutes, so it's no big deal if they break. But yeah, I said a year ago when I first bought the board, it felt like it was built like a truck. Build quality on this board is top notch, but you don't really know how something is going to age until you let it age, and a year later, this thing has aged like fine wine. This board has some top-notch build quality, and I am truly impressed with what Meepo has done here. All right, let's get into the rest of the pros. The number one reason that you should buy a Meepo Voyager, and this goes for every person, there is no exemption, it's for the range. This board has an absolutely insane maximum range. And I know, of course, there are all-terrain boards that can do longer ranges, but when we're talking about street boards, this is just about as good as it gets. Just for some reference, with the stock 90mm street wheels that came with the board, I got 30 miles of range on a single charge, and that was while riding at about 20 miles an hour the whole time. While that might not be as good as Meepo's claimed 36 miles of range, I also am a large person. I weigh about 195 pounds, I'm 6'4", so I'm kind of a sail, and I definitely wasn't riding gentle and preserving the throttle to get that 30 miles. So the range on this thing is seriously impressive. And one thing that goes hand in hand with range is the power. I am nowhere near the best electric skateboard rider that there is, but I'm getting pretty experienced at this point, and I've put a couple thousand miles on different boards, and I have about 1,000 miles on this board itself. And I not once have been in the top mode and thought to myself, man, I wish I could go faster, or I want more acceleration. It is an absolute beast when it comes to it. And actually, most of the time, there are 4 modes, 1 being beginner and 4 being expert. And most of the time, I actually ride in 3 because I find mode 4 to just be a little bit too crazy. Like, sometimes I ride in it, but I made a rule where I can only ride in mode 4 if I'm wearing my helmet and protective gear. But even still, mode 4, it's so fast that sometimes it feels less fun because I have to be so careful about the throttle because the thing just wants to go. And just like the range, while of course there are some all-terrain boards that are faster, have a better acceleration, better top speed, all of that, when you're talking about street boards, this is about as good as it gets. Now, yes, there are boards that are faster, especially all-terrain boards, and I know there are some street boards that can go a little bit faster, like I know Backfire just released a new Zealot, I think. But in my opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, I have never once wanted more power out of this board. And again, I'm a larger rider. If you were lighter, presumably you would accelerate faster. So I think the Voyager has more than enough power for basically everyone, unless you're trying to like race these things. You're gonna have an awesome experience. Next, let's talk about the board itself. It's made of bamboo and fiberglass. And what that means is you actually get a good amount of springiness from the bamboo, which absorbs a lot of the vibrations. So that actually feels really nice. It's one of the smoother boards that I've ridden as far as vibration dampening, and part of that is due to the bamboo, and another part is due to the grip tape. They have this thick foam grip tape
that actually does help soak up some of that road vibration, so that feels really nice. So if you're someone where your feet goes numb after you've been riding on like a chip seal road for a while, it'll still happen with this board, but it'll happen slower than on other boards. And if you really care about it, because this is a belt drive board, you can throw on bigger, fatter tires that will absorb more of that. And that's exactly what I did. I put on these 110s, which we're gonna talk about a little later, but then you roll over basically everything, and it's a way better experience in my opinion. As far as the top speed, Meepo claimed, I think they claimed 40 miles an hour. And I'm no expert, but I have a very hard time believing that they're actually getting something like that as far as top speed. Maybe if you put like a mouse on this board and you have the lightest rider with a breeze on your back and all that stuff, maybe you can get it up to 40. But in my testing with the stock wheels, with everything set stock at their fastest mode, I could get it up to, I think, about 34, maybe 35. Again, I am a heavier rider, so I'm sure that does affect it, but I don't think anyone's getting up to 40 without going downhill. That being said, I'm not mad about it at all. I don't want to go that fast. So I'm frustrated that Meepo has what I would call deceptive marketing, but I would say as far as top speed goes, I'm more than happy with the Voyager's top speed. When I'm cruising around town, I generally stay in the mid 20s and I'll kind of go as fast as 30, but I don't really like to go faster than 30 because it just feels a bit dangerous to me. So top speed, it feels great. It also will zip all the way up to 30. You get up there really fast. So as far as top speed goes, no, it's not Meepo's marketed 40 miles an hour, but I think it should be more than fine for almost everybody. Unless you're a speed demon, then I guess get something else. And while we're talking about top speed, I think we need to talk about the wheels. The Voyager came stock with 90mm street wheels, and those are totally fine. They're pretty much your normal e-skate wheel. But I cannot recommend getting some type of donut or cloud wheel. I got the 110 cloud wheels that came in a package deal with the Voyager on launch. But if you get something that's just a bigger wheel with a little bit more absorption, it has made a night and day difference for how confident and how comfortable I feel on the board, especially on longer rides. And you're gonna wanna do longer rides because it's got the range for it and it's so much fun to ride. So if you like street wheels, then more power to you, keep having fun with it. But if you don't know, try getting a bigger, softer wheel, and I bet you money you're gonna have a better time with them. Because when I switched from the 90mm streets to the 110 clouds, all of a sudden, it felt like I was on a whole new board. You can roll over rocks so much easier. You go over cracks so much easier. Where I live, we have a lot of chip seal roads, and those are pretty rattly on the 90mm. But on the 110s, you barely even notice the chip seal. So I seriously cannot recommend switching out the wheels enough. But I will say there are some downsides with switching to larger wheels. One, you have slightly lower acceleration. That doesn't really matter to me. This board has more than enough power. But two, and this should matter to more people, is that you do lose range. In my testing, you lose about 20 to 30% of your range depending on how you're riding it. And that is significant. That dropped me from getting about 30 miles on a full charge to getting maybe 20 miles on a full charge. And that does make a difference, especially when it comes to some of the cons that we'll talk about in a sec. So actually, with that being said, let's just get into the cons. So one of the cons for me is that switching to these new wheels, I now have about 20 miles of range. Now, that's more than enough for me. My daily commute that I do is about 10 miles. But I have found that once the battery hits about 50%, there is a noticeable decrease in peak performance. So for example, if the battery's at 50% and you punch it, you'll notice it doesn't pull nearly as hard as when the battery's at 100%. That might not matter to you, but what I've found is that the board is less fun to ride at lower than half. And so that's just something to know. One workaround that I use is that I ride around in mode 3 a lot of the time. Then when the battery gets to 50%, I switch it into mode 4, and then you get a little bit more of that punch, and then it kind of feels like you're in mode 3, but with the full battery. But that's not gonna work for everyone, especially if you're someone who wants to ride in mode 4 all the time. Then you're just kind of stuck. It still definitely has plenty of power with half battery, but I thought it's something that I should mention, that in lower states of charge, you will get worse performance. And while we're on the subject of batteries, I don't know if this is a negative or a positive, but I saw that when I bought my Voyager, it came with Samsung batteries, but when I looked at their website recently, they moved to Mollicell batteries. So I don't know if those are better or worse, but my gut instinct says that Samsung is the name brand batteries and the Molicel is probably a cheaper, worse version of a battery. Let me know if you know something different in the comment section below. Another con is the charge port cover. This might sound like a little thing, and it's something that I covered in my initial review of the board. But with my board, after I've been riding for maybe a mile or two, usually the charge port cover is about ready to fall out. And then after maybe a few miles, it does fall out. And so I have some workarounds where I've put some kind of Velcro to keep it plugged in. And so there are workarounds and you can keep it plugged. But just know the reality is if that charge port cover comes out and then water splashes up in there, you could easily short something out and then that would be a dead board. That would be the end of it. And it's such a silly thing because I bet you the charge port cover costs like cents on the dollar, but it could ruin the whole board if it doesn't hold a seal. So that's something that's a little bit frustrating. Again, you can put on something like Velcro or tape to keep it in, but it is something worth mentioning. Here's another con actually, is that this thing is heavy. I think it weighs like 26 pounds and it feels every single pound of that. It is so heavy. I'm kind of lucky being very tall that I can carry it with one arm and it doesn't drag on the ground. But if you're not super tall, just know carrying this thing is a hassle. Another thing, and I actually have seen this online quite a bit, so I know it's not just me or mine, is that the acceleration control is kind of twitchy. When I've ridden other powerful boards, they have what feels like smooth but powerful acceleration. But this board, it's crazy powerful, but when you go to accelerate, it likes to jump forward instead of doing a smoother acceleration forward. And it's not just that this board is more powerful, because you can get boards with the same amount of power and they'll just ease you into it a little more, whereas this one just takes off. Now, part of me feels like it's kind of fun because it feels like you're riding something a little wild and it's like it just wants to go. And so part of me kind of likes it, but the other part of me realizes that it's more dangerous, and especially this board has so much power, you can be going 20 miles an hour and then you kind of bump the throttle and it'll just try and zip out from under you, whereas other powerful boards don't do that.
You know what? That was close.
So that is kind of a bummer, but I will say after riding this board for about a year, it used to bother me a ton, but now it doesn't bother me hardly at all because you just get used to it and you learn that, okay, I accelerate a tiny bit slower, or I don't know exactly how you do it, but your brain figures out what to tell your thumb in order to not accelerate too quickly. So it works out, but it is something I thought I should mention. And then the last con, and this is actually probably the biggest con with this board, the Voyager, and with Meepos in general, is their customer service. Meepo is a Chinese electric skateboard company, and while there are a lot of skateboard companies out there in China, their customer service is not very good. Now, luckily, I haven't had any problems where I've needed to contact customer service with an immediate issue, but I did have a problem when ordering the board that they sent a charger that was defective, and I won't go into the whole story here, but long story short, they were not good with replying to emails in a timely manner or replying at all, or even giving good information. And it'd be one thing if that was just my experience, but after I had that experience, I looked at eSkate forums, and it turns out Meepo is kind of known for having bad customer service. So if customer service is something that matters to you, I wouldn't recommend a Meepo, even though I think it's a fantastic board. Because it is a board, something is going to break on this eventually, and just know, if you have a Meepo, you're probably going to be left to your own devices. So yeah, I would actually say the biggest con to this board is their customer service, because I feel pretty confident that if something breaks, Meepo's not going to be able to help me out, and I'm just going to have to go figure out a solution myself because their customer service just isn't very good. That being said, I don't want this to detract from the Voyager itself because it is seriously a fantastic skateboard. It's the best electric skateboard that I've ever used. It's been rock solid reliability-wise. It has been a seriously awesome piece of kit, but like I said, it's not without its flaws. All right, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. These electric skateboard videos generally don't get too many views, so I'll be able to get to all the comments. So seriously, if you have a question, even if it's hyper specific, let me know. I know there's a ton more I want to talk about on this skateboard, but the videos just get so long and boring that I feel like it's gonna be boring for everyone. But yeah, if you have a question, let me know. I'll get to it in the comment section below. All right, that's gonna do it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like. If you loved it, think about subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.